No King's Day turned deadly in Minnesota when a lone gunman allegedly murdered two state lawmakers and seriously injured two others. But the story gets much more bizarre. Here with more is Blaze News investigative journalist Joe Hanneman. So, Joe, thanks so much for joining us because you have done phenomenal work on this story. So just take us through the latest with what you have uncovered.
Well, we're just starting to get into some of the nitty-gritty details. I mean, the suspect in this case, Vance Boelter, is sitting in jail in central Minnesota awaiting trial. He's been indicted back in the middle of July. There was an indictment handed up with 6 felony charges, including stalking and murder of Melissa Hortman and her husband. She's the former Speaker of the Minnesota House. So he has been arraigned. Last week he was arraigned. He pleaded not guilty to all charges, and now they're going to wait. The Department of Justice asked the judge to define this case as a complex prosecution, which that was granted. That gives them a lot more time to prepare for trial than they normally would get under the Speedy Trial Act. So there's going to be a good long stretch now before they're back in court. It'll be about mid-November, and this case might not even go to trial till the middle or later of 2026.
Hey, Joe, it's so good to see you again, even by this manner here. But I'll echo, first of all, something that Jill said. This work that you're doing on Boelter's story is absolutely incredible. It's award-winning work. I encourage everyone to go to the Blaze and pull this up and read everything that you've written so far on this series. Now, one of the things that impresses me most is how you're able to follow this twists and turns in this guy's life. I mean, he has more twists and turns and broken highways than the Western North Carolina after the most recent hurricane went through. How are you able to track this and make sense of it all?
Well, I spent about 6 weeks digging into his background because this story from the beginning just simply did not make sense. This was not a career criminal. This was not a criminal at all. This man was a Christian preacher. He has 5 children. He's been married for nearly 3 decades. He does not fit the profile of somebody who would carry out one of the most heinous criminal acts in Minnesota history. His entire life up until about the middle of May stands at great odds to what happened on June 14th. And so I figured there just has to be a story behind that, something that would give us some clues. And so I went back as far as I could go and continue to do so. I actually found a photo of him today. He was less than a year old and appeared in the local newspaper in Sleepy Eye, Minnesota, and tracked his employment, his family interactions, his family history to try to get a better sense of who this man is. And that culminated this past Friday. I made contact with him in the Sherburne County Jail in Elk River, Minnesota, through the jail's messaging system. And he and I spent the weekend texting back and forth, probably, hundreds of texts. And he's starting to unroll what he says is his story and the reason that he was at those houses that night, which again has another kind of bizarre twist to it, that he did not mean to shoot anyone. He didn't plan to shoot anyone. He claims, going to make citizens arrests. And this was related to the clot shot. He was doing investigations, he said, for 2 years on the COVID-19 so-called vaccine and the deaths that it has caused. And this is why he said he got into this employment. He worked in the funeral industry for 2 years, which was not his background. He was worked in the food industry most of his adult life, and then all of a sudden he stops and goes into becoming an assistant, going on calls to retrieve dead bodies for funeral homes. And he says now that the reason for that is he was investigating these, what they call sudden and unexpected. And that is obviously it's been a big issue since the COVID-19 scamdemic came up. So I'm trying to peel this back with him slowly but surely, in 200 characters at a time on a text. So as long as he will keep talking, I hope to keep learning from him.
Well, yeah, and you have a piece out about his African business ventures that's up on the website. So just take us through why he's so interested in Central Africa in particular.
Well, this goes back to when he was working, I believe he was at 7-Eleven, and he went to a meeting. He had been involved in some of the business development groups in Minnesota. And in fact, two Democratic governors had appointed him to business development groups. So he went to a local county meeting, and the ambassador to the Democratic Republic of the Congo was the guest speaker. And he was talking about the issues they have in that country, which is a huge country, 115 million people, and they have to import most of their food, about 70%, which got his interest because of his background working for Gerber, Nestle, Schwann's. He had worked for Lettieri's, a provider of kind of snacks to go in the convenience food industry. So this got his interest, and he was invited by the ambassador to go to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which he's done at least 3 and possibly 4 times since then, and put together a company to go in and attract Western companies to plant, farmland. A lot of farmland in that country is farmable, but is not being used. So he set up an entire company working with a pastor from Minnesota who was native to that country. And so he spent a lot of time over the weekend explaining his reasoning for that. So he spent years trying to get this Red Lion group off the ground. But, as of the time of his arrest, I think it was kind of fizzling out.
One of the things that I've found most curious about Boelter is that he, since his Christian experience began, he's largely been part of the Pentecostal, charismatic, word of faith stream of Christianity. And that is a generally conservative group, conservative voting group. Yet he has a curious relationship directly with Governor Walz up there. Have you been able to gain any insight from him about that?
Well, the appointments to the business development boards, it's interesting. The media in the Twin Cities just dust that off and say that's meaningless. And it might be. I don't think, there's no evidence that Governor Walz knew him, even though Mr. Boelter makes the claim that the governor ordered him to commit these murders. Now, this was before he kind of shifted his story to this citizen's arrest thing. But there's, outside of that rather wild claim, there's no evidence that Boelter knew Governor Walz or Governor Dayton before him, another Democrat who had appointed him to a business advisory group as well. It does appear that Boelter, he's certainly conservative, pro-life. There's evidence that he has registered and voted in Republican primaries in Minnesota and in Oklahoma, which, that of course sparks from people on the left to seize on that and say, well, as some did, well, this is all on Trump. But this is much more complex, and it really does not have anything to do with what I would say is traditional partisan politics. This is a deeply personal thing to him. I don't know if this COVID story, is going to unroll in a believable way, but after listening to him all weekend, I can tell he honestly believes that, and we're hoping that he keeps talking so we get a sense of, again, and I haven't gotten to this, but what triggered you? When did you basically snap? Because he shocked everybody that knows him when this happened and he was arrested.
Well, you just said it. The story is much more complex. Everybody go read his stuff. It's at theblaze.com, and go follow Joe on X. Always appreciate the time, Joe.
Thank you.